It really was amazing.
Nancy, I couldn't avoid sharing. I couldn't avoid that.
I should have known. I should have known.
I couldn't avoid that.
It's okay. Go for it. I'm looking forward to this discussion.
So, Mara, welcome. And can you take over? Are you ready?
Yes, I am. I am very much ready.
Yay.
Okay. Can we start?
Yes.
I'm very happy to be here with all of you. And we had this wonderful round table, and I'm seeing there's lots of people here just sharing the podium of the Voice Foundation with all of us. I have many questions here, and so I'm going to start just by posing some of the questions, and you just come back and answer them to everybody, okay? So I would like to start to link something on vocal effort, because tomorrow we are going to have the marvelous special session on vocal effort. And actually everybody has already seen the session, so we don't need to wait until tomorrow to come up with some comments. And Edie, please, I know you have been working on a special Omni vocal effort scale, and actually a student of yours has presented a poster, beautiful poster. So why don't you start and comment on that?
So the Omni vocal effort scale was validated with people with spasmodic dysphonia. And it actually came from some qualitative research that we did with people, asking them, when you had a perfect Botox injection, how would you describe that it was perfect, that it was good? And pretty much across the board, people said that it reduced their vocal effort. And so the Omni scales are actually found in the exercise literature. They are adapted from the Borg scales, but they have pictures that are specific to what you're doing. So to make a long story short, we validated the Omni vocal effort scale with people with spasmodic dysphonia, and it was published in 2019. But long before it got published, we'd been using that scale with our patients with all kinds of voice disorders, because just like in SD, one of the things that we noticed was that people reported that what was most difficult about their voice was that it took so much effort to talk. So simple 10-point scale, and I'll use it sometimes even in my 7 sessions that I did already today, sometimes before and after we do a task, to see if people can monitor if they feel any difference in, and remember, this is not cognitive effort as Eva discussed, but this is physical effort in the throat, if they can differentiate.
Yes. Eva, please, can you comment, Eva, on how many points should we really use to track small changes? Because we can compare the Gerba scale and the Cape V, and now we have the Borg and all the other scales. Can you just comment something around this?
I wish that I had prepared for that. So when I had my dissertation research with where I used both, I looked at the VHI item 14, I think is the effort one. I feel like it takes strain or whatever to produce my voice. And then I used the Borg pre and post therapy. I know that the Borg gave much finer reduction points because it measures the degree of effort that you're using right now from 0 to 10, while the Cape V measures how often you feel you are using effort. So it's possible. So here's what I can say. If I can't answer your question, I'm not looking at it.
There is too much noise.
Yeah, mute yourself. Mute everybody.
Mute everyone. Okay. So what I wanted to say. Okay. So it is possible that you have a pre and post VHI, where somebody might remain on the effort item of the VHI. They might remain in the same bracket. How often do you feel you have to use effort to produce your voice or whatever? And they might still say, you know, whatever, often, right? Sometimes, always, some, you know, so then there's no change. And it doesn't pick it up when asked in that way, a way regarding frequency. Well, if you use a Borg scale, how much effort, right? Then you have a finer number, which I can't tell you what exactly our average reduction was, but it will pick up that finer, it's a different response format. And I think what we need to work on with the visual effort scale is there a way that we can actually visually represent vocal effort rather than weightlifting imagery? Like, is there a way that we can represent the effort in the larynx, right? Like that would be cool also.
Can I just respond real quick?
Yes.
Eva, you know, the truth is, at least with the SD population, we tried to draw what would be what people perceived was vocal effort. And then we showed them a bunch of different omni effort scales.
Yeah.
And in the study, in the manuscript, it says that across the board, people picked that it felt like weightlifting.
We wanted the weightlifting.
Who would have done that?
Perfect.
Okay, I'll be quiet.
Yeah, that's perfect. That was really helpful, actually. Okay.
I'm going to move, but actually to link something with effort. Is Maria Dietrich on our group?
Yes.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Maria, please. Yes, you are here. Okay, from the universe to the Voice Foundation. Maria, we know that patients with muscle tension dysphonia, they have this vocal effort feeling. It's very, very intense for them. And we also know that the best thing to work with them is laryngeal massage. It's a very powerful strategy, but what would be the scientific explanation for such a rapid, a fast recovery, sometimes in a session, from a very chronic problem? What is the trick? How does that work?
Yes, that is a great question. And in this scenario, also, we're really talking about the patients who lose their voice completely. So a muscle tension aphonia or functional aphonia, but it really can also be intermittent, which can actually also be a hallmark that the good voice is peeking through or leaking actually, and then it's back to full aphonia with that intense effort. So there are the peripheral mechanisms. So how you get to the aphonia can be, it can be a difference in muscular patterns, be it like a hypoadducted hyperfunction or hyperadducted hyperfunction. We have these terms from the literature. But then really scientifically, we need to learn more about the brain function behind that expression. And unfortunately, we only have a handful of papers really that help us here, but there is a growing literature, and we're trying to interface that with the literature on functional neurological disorders / conversion disorders. And so there are these cortical limbic networks or mechanisms that we try to understand better. So we do have some evidence that there is a shift in the limbic motor interaction that interferes, essentially. And I think what we can say at this point, putting the literatures together, is that what is happening during laryngeal massage has to do with shifting attention or distracting the patient. Because we know from the general F&D literature, functional neurological disorders, that suggestibility and distractibility are actually hallmark signs of the disorder, and that these patients are able to actually shift quickly to the good voice when you distract them, essentially, shifting their attention away from speaking, but more like voicing or making sounds, disrupting their muscular patterns, essentially. And Jenna Baker has published a lot on this. And actually, Mara, you are also on this consensus group for functional neurological disorders that we're working on, that we're part of, to actually come up with some guidelines for assessment for speech therapy and also for swallowing. And I think in the future, we want to maybe come up with maybe a distractibility test during assessment, like that we want to use with everyone to probe if that is the case.
Okay, Claudio, please, you have a large experience with laryngeal massage, muscle tension dysphonia. Would you like to add something to that? Would you like to share your opinion on the subject?
Yeah, I think that the question is very interesting. If I understood correctly, the question is, how can we explain from a scientific standpoint?
Yes.
How come a laryngeal massage can so quickly improve a function that was lost? It's a great question, but I would pose it maybe in reverse, because oftentimes the most common onset of people with this kind of dysphonias is after an upper respiratory infection. So they have access to this mechanism of voicing that all of a sudden they get sick, they get laryngitis or something, and they lose the ability to access a function that was present their entire lives. We do not understand the pathophysiology of this. It's a very, very interesting mechanism. How come something that you've been doing since you were a baby, basically, all of a sudden you cannot access those motor patterns anymore? If we can answer that question, then the question, how can we restore it so quickly, will fall in line as well. I think that there's a lot of things that we do not understand yet. And I think that, you know, with the efforts of researchers like Maria and other people right now, that they're trying to get a little further in the understanding of how these disorders take place and then how we can fix them.
Okay, good. I was previously to join to this session. I was with Professor Van Leer discussing. She's having problems with the internet in Belgium yesterday and today. I feel very much relieved because it's not only in Brazil we are facing problems with the internet and Zoom. So she's trying to join the group, but she's not managing to do so. There is a question to her that I'm going to forward to Caitriona because this is on her domain. Okay, so Professor Van Leer commented that many patients and children with behavioral dysphonia came back to the clinic after the isolation period from the pandemic with better voices. They were not in their environment, they were at home, and the degree of dysphonia has reduced a lot. Can you comment something on the environment, or what have we learned about it? What can we use with our patients? Because of course we don't want people isolated to have better voices, but we need to help them to deal with the environment, even if the environment is not a positive one. Please, Caitriona.
Okay, I think this is a very classical result as a result of coronavirus and lockdown. They were out of their working environment, their everyday life. They didn't have social contact. It's like the primary school teachers, when they get a summer break, they come back with a better voice in September. So just simply by taking them out of the working environment and the demands that the work environment puts on the individual and on the voice, that just helps to improve the voice. It's very like in the time that we tried to do vocal rest, which is not recommended anymore, but it's just a type of modified vocal rest, I think, and the same with the pandemic. So do you want me to talk more about working conditions?
Yes, please, please go.
So working conditions are very, very important. Very often in the clinic, we listen to the patient, we listen to their problem, but we don't always go deeply into their working conditions. And the working life is a very major part of the day, of the 24 hours of the day. They are at work 8, 9, 10 hours a day. So it's very, very important to know how they're using their voice during that great bulk of time. And so I think that for example, primary school teachers, they go to work. They work for 5 hours continuously with very little opportunity for vocal rest. They have to teach. In Ireland, they have 11 subjects to teach. They have an overloaded curriculum. They have to teach singing. They have no training for teaching singing. So they speak continuously, and I think this continuous talking over 5 hours with little opportunity for vocal rest, that is going to cause vocal fatigue. So now that's primary school teachers. But if you compare them with secondary school teachers, the working conditions, they, for example, they work a 5-hour day or a 6-hour day. They may have a class to teach in the morning of 45 minutes. They may not have another class to teach until the afternoon. So they have plenty of opportunity for vocal rest.
Yes.
I just think of another example, broadcasters, for example. I have had the opportunity to follow some broadcasters at one of the big broadcasting stations in London. And I'm thinking of one particular broadcaster. He had to give a news bulletin every hour on the hour. And he had 6 minutes to give that that news bulletin. So he had to deliver the message correctly in the perfect voice, and at the same time to be liked by his audience. So that in itself is a huge stress, to have to deliver a news bulletin in 6 minutes in the perfect acoustical conditions, audience speaker conditions, and also to have to put across the correct message. So these are just some of the working conditions.
Yes.
There are many others. So the working conditions are so important. I think they count for 75% of. Yeah.
Okay. I do agree. Debbie, please. On the other hand, if people get isolated, they get deconditioned. How are you going to deal with musical theater, deconditioning, and what about conditioning in our way back to full life? We hope we are going to go back to full life. Open your mic, Debbie.
I'm on. Yes, I think that it's a great topic, and I feel like the world's gone so crazy with what's going on that it's about people who are changing their vocal demands, and we need to adapt our support and therapy and focus accordingly. And so we're seeing people who are either talking less, we're seeing people who may be talking more because of all their tele practice or whatever they might be doing on Zoom, and etc. So that adaptability is really important. And as you know, Mara, dear to my heart is this idea of vocal fitness and about conditioning. Yes. And so one of the things is about tapping into also where everybody's is at psychosocially and psychologically at the moment with the corona, the fear. All of those things become really relevant to the vocal demands as well. So the conditioning part, I've been saying to a number of performers who are very, very low, obviously because they're not performing. I know I've got people here at the moment, Linda, I'm sure is nodding here, that it's a horrible time for performers in the entertainment industry. So it's about making sure they find the joy. Someone's got their mic on again. Can I ask them to mute themselves? Thanks. No. Sorry. Can everybody else mute themselves? No. Can you hear me okay? Eva, can you just mute? No, you're mute. No, someone, yeah. No.
If the moderator can mute everybody except the speaker, that will be great.
Maria's the moderator and she left.
Okay. I'll just keep talking. Whoever's got their microphone on, please turn it off.
Our moderator is not in the room, so everybody turn the mic off, please.
The sound is coming from Evelyn's Vatsanapan.
Or Vivian.
Yeah, they're both together.
Okay, here we go. Okay.
Maria?
Excellent. That's okay, we're okay now. So, I just wanted to say, I've been suggesting to a number of the performers that I work with, they've got to go back to find the joy of their voice and go back to singing for themselves. And so I'm really getting them to do conditioning work where they're really enjoying their own voices and doing regular workouts, vocal workouts, and priming, but particularly going back to just loving their sound rather than having been, 8 shows a week or whatever out there performing. Now go back and just play with their voice. And this idea of vocal play and conditioning, I'm also a big fan for doing resistance work. So a number of them I'll suggest to get a cup, or in our case a mask, like a nebulizer mask, occlude it and give themselves a big workout, very much like the challenge and the Edie's forte ideas, all of these sort of concepts of really doing a vocal workout to maintain vocal fitness through this time. And of course, being aware of the psychological impacts on the voice at present, and if they feel we've had lots of clients with vocal discomfort, which I know is just a somaticization of a lot of other things that are going on. I don't know, does that answer your question, Mara?
Can I add something, Mara? I think that the issue of deconditioning and maintaining vocal fitness while you're not performing is essential. But also, one of the things that have been brought about by this global crisis is the issue of how we use the voice so differently when we're doing a Zoom meeting versus teaching. I was on the phone with a colleague of ours that pretty much everybody in this room knows. She has a wonderful voice, and she's been teaching college for a very long time. She said she never experienced vocal fatigue. She's now teaching Zoom classes. And she said that after 1 hour of teaching Zoom, her voice is strained, she feels fatigue, and she's very knowledgeable about voice therapy and voice use. And still she cannot, or she hasn't found yet, a way to change the way she uses her voice when she's using a microphone on Zoom to avoid vocal fatigue.
Claudio, please, there was a question on that. And the question is, are there any recommendations to avoid vocal fatigue during telehealth? So go ahead and complete and also answer to this question.
Well, if I may, I'm going to pass this question on to Edie, because Edie was talking about it earlier. I really don't know what are the best, maybe somebody that teaches radio, then they teach how to use the voice for a microphone, have a better answer than me. Edie?
So I was asked to write a short little article for our for the UAB e-medicine team, and was asking all my colleagues. That's how Claudio threw this back to me, what they suggested. But what I found on Zoom that is not on the platform that we have at the university is that you can optimize your settings. If for those of you that use Zoom, you know that one of the best ways to make sure that you're doing better listening is to turn on original sound, and that's found down by your mute button as an option, so it doesn't clip off things that are said because it thinks that anything that's longer than a few seconds is background noise. Zoom uses that. Another way, Claudio, you were holding yours up too, and we both, I think, have the same mic. Oh, you guys can tell my fake office background, sorry. But one of the things that I've noticed is now that I have a headset that also allows me to hear myself. So it's got the built-in microphone and the ability for me to actually hear my own voice, that my vocal loudness is so much lower. I'm not screaming at the computer all day. And so I feel a lot less fatigued. And I would say this was probably the best thing that happened. This is this one is just a Scarlett Studio, and it was a couple $100 and well worth it.
I think that we need to learn to reset our voice from time to time when we are using Zoom or any platform. Please,
Definitely.
Stella, go ahead, answer that, and also let us know if you believe that we should avoid using semi-occluded vocal tract exercise during COVID time. So,
thank you, Mara.
Please, and go ahead.
If I can add on something about how to avoid vocal fatigue. For me, I think all of us have gone through the, the Zoom teaching period. I found that at the beginning, for me, as a kind of first-hand experience, I do find that, my voice got fatigued very easily. I seems like, shouting to the computer every now and then. So, and that's a good reflection for me, because that's exactly what our patients would be experiencing as well. So some of my practice that I do on myself is having some kind of warming up. So before the teaching, I have warming up, and I also remind myself that not to yell, and also to slow down my speech rate when I talk, over the Zoom, exaggerate the mouth movement when, when I talk. So these are some of those very simple and perhaps it's trivial kind of, methods, but I found it really useful to avoid vocal fatigue. And at the end of the day, it's a kind of adaptation, as Eva has mentioned. So once, at the beginning, I think some of the vocal fatigue also is because of the psychological stress with all those, adapting the online teaching, adapting to the, to the pandemic, everything. So once getting through all those, then everything will get better.
I have one I wanted to add, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
I noticed that when I started to go into this mode while teaching in a class or it was a meeting, that what I know, first you have to catch it. So it would be nice to have some biofeedback like you're too loud. But I turned away from the screen and looked, over here as if I was talking to someone here, and adjusted my voice to what it would be if I were just talking to you over here, and then returned to the screen. And it was reset. Because if you were just over here, I wouldn't be talking to you like this. Do you know what I mean? Like the distance of the screen, it was just a little thing, and it helped.
Yes, and Stella, would you like to come back and to answer to the question if we should avoid semi-occluded vocal tract exercise like tube in the water, resonance tube? Should we use facial mask for these exercises? Please.
Yeah, thank you, Mara. Well, the SOVT is a kind of, is an umbrella term. So the SOVT, there are many, I think the question would be referring to the straw exercise, the straw phonation exercise. But then, other exercises under the SOVT, like lip trill, humming, that definitely that can be done, during the COVID time. And the straw phonation, I would say yes as well, particularly if those is, straw phonation with water. So phonating in the water, that would be not much problem. And I think we do need to think about, this virus is going to live with us. So apart from, so there's no need to totally avoid everything, because we need to adapt and to live with the virus, at least for a short period of time. So I think we have to keep our life as normal as possible, like, as our practice as normal as possible. But do remember to be careful and be alert and take, those precautionary measures as much as we can. So as simple as we have discussed that at the roundtable discussion. So like, those precautionary temperature measures, like taking temperature before we see the patient, use those hand sanitizer, when the patient comes to the clinic, and, have those measures in place, then that would be something that we need to work on. Whether using face mask under those face shield is good, I will say yes, because that would help to get, to protect not only the client, but also to us and to other clients who will be coming into the clinic room afterwards. So does that answer, Mara?
Please, Claudio. open your mic, Claudio, please?
Thank you. I think this question is pretty much in the mind of everybody around the world that does any kind of voice work. And there's not easy answers. We cannot say that whether one technique is safe versus the other, because we need to consider a lot of different factors. For example, the size of the room, the distance that you are to your client, the time of exposure, how much droplets or airborne particles are generated by each of these procedures, the ventilation in the room, a lot of different factors that will make the answer for that question very different for each individual practice. So this is also that is being now thought for the singing world and people who do choral singing or voice studios. And again, there are so many different factors that we don't understand. We still don't know very much about the contagion of this virus via, airborne particles. So we need to be careful. We need to do things that we feel that will protect us, but we don't have one answer. Is this exercise safe or not? Because there are so many other factors. And I want to add one thing that was really interesting. I was talking with Ingo Titsa yesterday, and we were talking about the same things about singing. He mentioned that, there's a lot of concern about loud singing. And there's this thought that that will generate more airborne particles. And he said that actually loud singing doesn't increase the airflow at all. So comfortable singing and loud singing, or comfortable speaking and loud speaking, have the same amount of airflow output. What changes is the resistance at the level of the larynx. The voice quality that increases a lot the airflow is a breathy voice. So keeping these things in mind, this will give us food for thought, and in what kind of exercises also we're doing with our patients, and which ones may potentially generate more viruses in the air.
So maybe soft vocal attack would be worse than loud phonation, because you will have maybe more particles. Okay, Edie, please, I would like you to comment one thing. If the outcome of voice therapy does not relate directly to the method used, because we know that several methods lead to good outcomes.
Right.
And if we know that coping and adherence are important factors, shouldn't we be investigating more this factor and less on length and size of tubes or different straws? Okay, so that's the question.
So I think that really talking with your patient, your very first time that you're with them and throughout your therapy about essentially how things are going, and is therapy meeting their needs? Are they finding that they're able to integrate the new things that they've learned? Is it, because it doesn't really matter if I think their voice sounds better or not. It really matters if the voice is meeting their needs or the things that they come in and they're concerned about. So from the very first time I see someone, I start talking to them about, what concerns you about voice therapy? Eva taught us that voice therapy is hard per the patient's perception. And I think we all need to remember that. And from the very beginning, just start concentrating on that. I always say, I did voice therapy very differently 39 years ago than I do it today, but my voice patients got better then. Otherwise, I wouldn't still be doing it. It would be too depressing, right? So the magic, I think, is more in developing trust in how your patient relates to you, if they believe that what you're doing is actually going to lead them to better voice. And I do think that that is probably the #1 important feature, more than if I'm using a big straw or a little straw or cup bubbles or my hand over my mouth or something like that.
Edie, you and I are the most mature duo of this roundtable. And we had the pleasure of sharing the Voice Foundation with Janine Casper, Daniel Boone, Arnold Aronson, all these icons in the field. And they had wonderful results, and they knew different things that we know. You just said that the kind of therapy you give now is very different to the one you used to give 30 years ago. So, what is essential? What has not changed after those 3 decades of huge knowledge that we all have produced?
The therapeutic alliance, I think, is what hasn't changed. I think that our forefathers and foremothers, those great people who we stand on the shoulders of them, and I have to say Frank Wilson also, because he was an important person in my life. But I think that everyone has understood the importance of that therapeutic alliance and bringing the patient into the session and having them believe that voice therapy plays a role in their treatment. You know, Mara, one of the things that I think has helped us so much with that frustration with dropout or non-adherence or, you know, Eva, the old getting stuck, is I think the relationship with our physicians has helped us, because I think now that they're better educated and they, even if we're not standing in the room with them, they can talk to their patients about what the heck we're doing and about how long it's going to take. I really think that that's made a difference to a lot of people and to patients buying into therapy.
Oh, yes. I think that the level of communication we have with physicians now is much higher than we used to have in the past. So this is also a very strong alliance, the alliance among all the health professionals and the alliance between the patient and the clinician. I think this is great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Stella, please. Can you comment something on the intensive voice training produces better results for patients? So when we cannot give an intensive therapy, should we ask them to do more exercises at home? Should we follow them on a different way? What's your comment about this?
So just to clarify the question, is that whether we should be giving intensive voice therapy or, I mean, intensive voice training or...
Yes, let's see, both. If you give intensive voice therapy, it's fine. The patient does not have to do many exercises at home because he's in intensive care. But let's say the patient cannot do intensive voice therapy because it lives far away from the clinic. Should we ask them to do more exercises at home and to monitor it?
That's an interesting question. We know that the intensive voice training would give a better outcome. I know that a group of researchers from U of Kentucky has done that. But we also need to be very careful of whether we give too much home practice to the client. So we need to give a good balance between the training and also exercises. And with the advance of technology, I'll be very careful at providing home practice and then assuming the patient would do the home practice. So using the technology to keep track and to keep working with the clients, like over the Zoom or a quick WhatsApp message, just to keep contact with the client, that would be good. So I would say it's not an easy easy task to think of, but then to have a good balance between the training and not to over prescribe the home practice for the client, and at the same time we need to keep closely monitoring and working with the clients, just to let them know that even though during this time of isolation we're still around and still be able to answer any questions from them.
Okay, Maria, please. There is a question that I think you would adore to answer. How can we help patients who are heavily influenced by emotions in their voices?
Yes, that's a great question, of course. And it really depends on the degree of interference, I think. Is it just your daily average stress, or are the emotions so intrusive, or are people having ruminations, intrusive thoughts? They cannot get rid of these emotions and they truly keep interfering with someone's voice. And I think there we are getting into aspects or these interprofessional interactions where we do have to consider either maybe recommending a stress management program that they do in parallel with voice therapy, or having contacts with or networking with psychologists who can provide cognitive behavioral therapy. But there is also a recent British study by the group from Vincent Deary and Paul Carding, who actually developed a brief cognitive behavioral intervention that speech language pathologists can implement. And so I think that is really something to consider, to really own that part in voice therapy as well, and to provide that as needed. So it really depends on the patient. With some patients, we can talk through the interactions between stress and emotion and personality, and how that can affect the voice, and making them aware. And maybe some of these patients will develop that awareness that they can catch themselves and take a deep breath and realign. But for some other patients who are at a greater risk for recurrence, I think that's where we really have to pay attention and provide additional services ourselves or with other professionals.
Okay.
Can I add something, Mara?
Yes, please, Claudio.
I love that question. And as Maria was answering it, I thought of the question in reverse, because a lot of times we have patients that have voice pathology that conveys to the listener an emotion that the patient doesn't have.
Yes.
I'm thinking of our patients with tremor, that they always say, well, people think that I'm always nervous or sad, or patients with Parkinson, with that quiet voice, they think that they are withdrawn. So how this question can go both ways, when a voice pathology can convey an emotion that is not there, and what does the patient need to do to reinforce the opposite? And also how emotions can impact the way we sound. Great question.
Yeah, I think that it was 2 years ago, and it was published on Journal of Voice, an article on teachers with dysphonic voices and teachers with healthy voices, and the way the students were reacted on an emotional level to teachers with disordered voices. And they react, the teacher is angry, does not have patience. It's not only that it's more difficult to the student to understand and to learn from a dysphonic voice, but also the kind of emotion that I understand from the situation is distorted. So we all know dysphonia is not a problem in the vocal folds, it's a communication problem. And this is a major point. Claudio, I'll keep the question to you. What is the real importance of working with isolated breathing in voice therapy, just with breathing, not coordination? only with breathing patterns?
That's a little bit of a, a pet peeve of mine, because in all the voice classes that most voice courses, when they start talking about voice therapy, they first teach the students, breathing. And in my practice, I find that just dedicating much time to breathing, it really doesn't pay off. I don't think that addressing breathing in and of itself, unless you're teaching singing or you're teaching, classical singing or belting or something like that, spending time with your average voice patient on breathing, I don't see the value of it, unless you see a specific disorder breathing pattern. So if somebody comes and they're breathing all up here, of course you need to address that, because that may, affect the way they sound, creating a lot of tension. But the majority of voice patients don't have that. So I think that that is more of a traditional old school to work with breathing with most voice patients. I don't use that in my practice at all. I would like to hear what other people
I want to move to Debbie. And now, if you have a disordered singing patient, singing voice patient, what is the role of breathing? Go ahead.
Okay, I'll answer that. I want us to follow on a little bit more, and just we'll go to singing, but just generally, it always comes back to what is the goal, and I think that that perhaps it also relates to what we're talking about even with intensive voice therapy. It comes back to the individual needs of the client and what we're wanting to do in terms of their vocal demands. We're trying to help them manage their day-to-day vocal needs. So whether we do intensive, whether we work on breathing, we'll all come back to, to that. But in terms of from a singing point of view, which is your question, I'm sorry, Mara, it took a while to get there. In terms of a singer, again, there are times when the respiratory patterns, and I know you didn't ask about coordination, but perhaps the air intake, is not sufficient for the vocalization, the phonation. And that's when I would talk about the relationship between the power, the source, and the filter. And the power becomes important to focus on. But I totally agree with Claudio. That doesn't mean that I'm going to talk about breathing independently of anything of the other two. It's all related, and it's about, are you taking enough air for your phonatory needs in that context? So I don't work with breathing per se, but I am a big fan, as you know, Mara, of the accent method, and of bringing in this idea of people trying to coordinate or accent the breath in order to create dynamics in changes in pitch and loudness. Does that sort of answer the question?
Yes. Stella, please, can you share with us?
Yeah, same thought as Debbie. I don't work on train on breathing per se, but I would work on the breathing phonation coordination. I would, simply ask the client to, to breathe, and then when breathe out, use very simple task. I use the S method as well. Sometimes, for many patients, I also use simple, simply counting, and just ask them to focus at the outcome. The sound quality when they count 1, 2, 3, and then to gradually move on to 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's to train how they incorporate and coordinate the breathing with the phonation.
Okay, Maria, please.
Can you just repeat the question just one more time?
The question
you want
is,
me to connect?
how is the importance of breathing in voice therapy? And you may link with the limbic system and the premotor control cortex, because we know breathing can just break some patterns, some limbic patterns.
Yes. So with that patient group, it depends if you want to address the breathing part or not, because as you said, with the emotions and to the extent that emotions are interfering with voice production and ease of voice production, there may be an interference also at the level of the vocal folds, so the respiratory laryngeal interaction. And in patients where we do feel there is the breath holding, the inhibition, reluctance in initiation of voicing and speech, this hesitance or holding back, we would want to address that. Not in the whole sense that we're thinking that their diaphragmatic breathing is wrong or that we have to go through all the steps of breathing, but making them aware of the role of breathing in good and easy voice production so that they can rebalance the breathing with the voicing and the resonance. So it's more that we're staying up here and making them aware of the role of breathing, and also maybe to calm their system by taking a couple of deep breaths or pausing to refocus, and yes, helping them in that way.
Okay, we have less than 10 minutes and I have to close the session. So I'm going to give you 30 seconds to share one interesting thing that we discussed today or when we recorded the session. So Eva, please.
Oh no, I was completely blanking.
What was interesting for you? And it does not have to be something brilliant. What was interesting for you in sharing these two sessions, the recorded one and this one with this whole group?
Oh, just how enjoyable it is, right? I just love seeing everyone. I had both, you know what was interesting, but I will make a serious comment in a moment, that both on Sunday and today, my hair looks good. So, so I don't know, I think we need to have a lot of these webinars because apparently there's clearly causation between having one of these and having good hair. The data show. But
Yes.
what I wanted to say that I haven't said for this whole thing is the benefits, right? We've talked about the problems with Zoom, that we're yelling at our patients and stuff like this. However, from the friends that I have that are doing teletherapy right now, I'm not running participants, I'm just analyzing data. They have said how happy, at least in Atlanta, their patients have been not to have to fight an hour of Atlanta traffic each way. Yes. And also a second thought, that they can often now through telemedicine be visited in the problem situation. So that's the cat, that we don't, oh my goodness, Jake. Okay, so that, you know, and that what do we want to keep from today's COVID environment, right? The non-brick and mortar clinic, right? The virtual clinic. What do we want to keep of this? How we can see our patients in the problem setting, support them virtually. That I think is an interesting thing.
Thank you. Caitriona, please. What would you like to highlight from Sunday or today? Open your microphone. Open the microphone, Caitriona.
Mara, thank you very much. Would you like me to take any particular orientation?
No, just to say what you liked in the session.
Okay, I liked everything in the session. I love the interaction. I like this better than when you have a panel like at the Voice Foundation and one person gives a paper and another person and another person. This is a lovely platform. We're all interacting. There is emotion attached to it. We can see each other's faces, body language. And I think it's nice for the audience too. I think it holds their attention rather than if they're just looking at one slide after another. And the other thing I just want to say, because I did speak about coping yesterday, so I won't say that now. Just one word I want to say that I think is very important in therapy, and that's perceived control. Stephanie Misono wrote a beautiful article last year on perceived control, and she said that patients who felt they had control over their nodules or their voice problem had a better outcome than patients who felt they didn't have control over their outcome. So yeah, the patients who had perceived control had better results than the ones who did not feel they had control over their situation. And the other thing I want to say about perceived control is that perceived control is also very important in the choice of coping strategy used, whether emotional or cognitive, and this may lead to whether a patient develops a voice problem or not. So perceived control is very important, I think. Okay, also for coping, in choice of coping strategy.
Thank you. Stella, please. What would you like to highlight or to share with the group?
Thank you, Mara. You know, every year going to Voice Foundation is like a mission. So this year we cannot meet face to face, which is a pity. On the other hand, having the COVID-19 period is a good time for us to reflect on our practice and also on our work. Well, thank you so much for the Voice Foundation for setting up this virtual symposium for us to share the views. I think it's a good time that we can do some reflection on our practice. And from the two sessions, I'm so amazed of how much we have advanced in the voice area, both the research, scientific, and also the clinical side. And I think one message that come out from this roundtable discussion is that when we work on a problem, we have to work from different angles and to think from different perspectives. So like vocal fatigue, like working with someone who are influenced by the emotion, whether we should be using the SOVT during the COVID-19 times. So all these we have to think from different angles, and I think that's a good platform for us to discuss together and to share the views.
Thank you, Stella. That was wonderful. Debbie, dear. By the way, I love the photo you have behind you because all of us were there together. I love that. Love that.
I have loved this whole experience. Thank you, Mara. And I think what's really clear to me is the commonality that the fact that we all shared. I know we were hoping for a bit of conflict, weren't we, Claudio? But we've all agreed, which is always wonderful. Not hoping for it, but we expected we might have some difference of opinion, but we're all there. I think the main theme to me has been the fact we're really having to be adaptable at the moment. We have to really encourage and enable our clients during this current climate and I think enabling is an important word to me, or it's probably a better word, but this concept of them feeling empowered and charged and vocally fit to handle the current climate they have, but really tapping into the relationship between that and how they're feeling, and that common theme we've all had about being really positive and being a really important sort of support for these difficult times from a vocal point of view. I think there's lots of really great things that have come from this. I've got to know my clients better because I'm going into their lounge room or whatever. I feel they're sharing more, and I feel that it's more dynamic because it's about working on that relationship between the core, who the person is and how adaptable they are. I love Caitriona's comment about perceived control. So I think it's been great. And I think, thank you so much again to the Voice Foundation, but also to Mara for your wonderful steering as always.
Thank you, Debbie. Maria, please. It's your turn.
Well, speaking of perceived control, I lost control of my Zoom screen somehow. I still see the panel, the slides, but something's not quite right. So I was a little distracted before, but I really like the interaction with everyone. For example, like how Claudio looked at the questions in reverse, or how we really look at the different angles, like Estella said. Thinking about the question you just posed, I was thinking I really liked the first question we had during the roundtable about the key issues and new clinicians should take into considerations, and how we obviously care about the new generation, or even those who want to get into the voice field and pick up on current trends and the future. And so it's so true that we care about the knowledge and really to spread the knowledge among many people. And so I really find these roundtables incredibly inspiring.
Okay, thank you, Maria. Claudio?
To me, one of the good things about this session is that gave us a space to talk about safety. You know, all over the world, speech pathologists are starting to reopen their clinics, and they're going back to work, and everybody wants to know how to go back to work in a safe manner, protecting yourself as a clinician and protecting your patients. Like I said before, every situation is different, but my recommendation for everybody is analyze what your situation is in terms of space, ventilation, what things you need to do to make you feel comfortable practicing and taking care of your patients. Use a mask and have your patient use a mask as a minimum precaution. If you feel that some of the exercises that you're going to do will require some extra protection, use a mask and a face shield. Try not to be too close to your patient. If you have a larger room, try to do that. I know that some clinicians work in very small environments. See what you can do. If it's possible, at least now in the US with summer coming, can you bring some of your clinic outside? Can you bring some of your singing training outside? Can you use your choir, you know, to sing, you know, in a bigger room or a more ventilated room? If you teach in a university, maybe the gyms now are not being used. Can you move your choral practice there and you have each singer separated? I don't know, so many things that you can do, but the most important thing is to everybody to be able to do the work they do, they are passionate about in a safe manner. So thank you for everybody watching all over the world. And thank you, Mara and Maria and the Voice Foundation for giving us this opportunity.
Thank you, Claudio. Edie, please, now is your turn.
Oh my goodness. Well, a very, very hard multiple acts to follow. So the one very short thing I want to say is I am so thankful for this opportunity because we are living in a time of fear. We are living in a time of chaos. We are living in a time of uncertainty and wondering if what we're doing is correct, and an opportunity to be with everyone like this and to hear what people are doing, or to ask questions, or to have somebody say, oh, are you sure you should do that? It's so valuable. And I think in a very strange way, what this has done is really brought us all together and shown us how much we need each other. And it doesn't matter if you're in Hong Kong or Australia or Brazil or New York, I'm looking at Linda, or Birmingham, Alabama, for goodness sakes, right? We all really need each other. And I'm very thankful for this.
Well, I'm going to just close the session.
May I say one word before you?
Yes, please, Maria, please.
So, thank you so much. Dr. Sadaloff wanted to come very much, but he is at the graduation of his son right now, who just is graduating from Harvard Medical School and won a special prize that's going to be given tomorrow. So it's a very exciting time, and he will watch it afterward and wanted to send his regards and regrets. So thank you so very much for the time and energy you have all put into this, from waking up at the wrong times to just preparing this incredible session. And Mara, your leading is phenomenal. So thank you.
Thank you, Maria. I just want to say to you all something that I always repeat. My second home is Philadelphia. I feel very Philly. My soul belongs to the United States. And you are all my family from all over the world. And that's one of the best things of our profession, is to be able to have this huge networking. I know that I can call Maria, I can call Edie, I can call Linda, I can call Debra, I can call Katie, I can call Dawn, I can call Diana, Lorna, Maria, Crystal, Claudio, and Alicia, and all that are here, and say, I need help. And I know that you feel the same about me and about all of us. Perceived control is something very difficult during COVID times, because we feel we do not control anything. But that's the real life. What is nice is that we do not have to control everything. And I'm a huge controller. We have to perceive that we can be able to at least to look the situation and to give some meaning. And I have been seeing meaning all over the world during these hard times. Like I said, we are going to come out of this pandemic time poorer, more empathic, and with a better virtual connection. During these weeks, we learn so much on electronics, on microphones, on platforms, so on. So I'm sure mankind is not going to be destroyed. We are going to overcome with pain, with wounds in the heart, but I'm sure we are going to come out of this with better mind. And I want to see you all at our 5th anniversary next year, June 2 to 6. The Voice Foundation. Doesn't matter if we are going to be dressed up as astronauts. Doesn't matter, we all will be there and we will hug each other, okay? Maria Russo, you are the engine of the Voice Foundation. You know how much the Brazilian chapter loves you. You know how much the world loves you, your energy, and the way you inspire us to move forward. Thank you deeply for this opportunity of organizing this table and to sharing so many good voices with all the world. Thank you all.
Thank you. And thanks to Katie too and Dr. Bob.
Thank you, Mara.
Yes. My best greetings to all the staff, and Dr. Bob also knows he lives in our heart. He is mutual to all of us. He can be shared, okay? Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for coming.
Bye, Mara. Thank you. Bye, Maria. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye, Linda. Bye.